And we are live. What's going on? Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube Live. It is your man, Coach Rowe. Today is Tuesday. I'd like to welcome you to the first row. And since it's a Tuesday, you by this time should know what that means. It's time for another session of the Men's Circle. Tonight's topic that we will be discussing on the Men's Circle is take inventory. I always like to say what the topic means to me, but before I get into what the topic means to me, let me introduce my brother here, Arturo Diaz. You see, I said that Arturo.
Ooh, that's me, baby. I like it. Keep working on it.
Say what's up to the people, Arturo, and introduce yourself.
I like it. Well, what up, everybody? Yes, my name is Arturo Diaz. I'm currently residing out in Florida, my beautiful home here. I had to tell my wife Heidi to get up off the piano there because we were about to do manly things, you know. Again, thanks, Billy, for having me on. It's always a pleasure to have these conversations with you. At first, I wasn't. I was kind of like a little nervous on these topics because sometimes we men just can't really open up. You know what I mean? Because then those automatic, darts of, oh, that sounds pretty sissy, or so on and so forth. But again, we're here for today's topic: take inventory, and to me, that's a real, mind thinker.
Yeah, definitely. Appreciate you having you on here, bro. Actually, before we even move on to my brother Tim down there, I actually appreciate your adoption of the Men's Circle as far as being. I remember when we first I was like, hey, yo, we got this thing that we're doing. You might want to tune into one of these. And you're like, oh man. And then you're like, I missed it. And then I'm on the wrong link. And now all of a sudden you're like this professional, yo, Men's Circle, right? Yep.
And heck yeah, man. Now I'm really sure, yo, I got an hour to go. I got 2 days to go after this. Don't be bothering me. You know what I mean?
Right.
Well, I normally don't get involved in things, but I'm getting involved. You know what I mean?
Nah, I feel that. And it's kind of necessary because I feel like 2 weeks is the perfect cadence because it's right as that high begins to taper off, you re-up. Right as you feel that support, dang, do I have any support out there? It re-ups. And so I'm with you on that. And the fact that it's like a bi-weekly thing, it's easy to kind of forget in your routine that, hey, is it this week or is that next week? But I definitely appreciate your adoption for the Men's Circle. With that, we got my brother Tim reporting live from I don't even know where he's at today.
Parts unknown, reporting live from parts unknown. Now I'm at soccer practice. So the take inventory thing, man, first of all, the Men's Circle, just to piggyback off what y'all were talking about, it's amazing. I start feeling the missing of it. When we take, I had a feeling as a coach for my son's soccer, so I missed a week. I missed that not having it that week. It's for the topic, taking inventory. Sometimes when they say the first step of admitting of addressing a problem or fixing a problem is admitting there is one. How do you do that if you don't know what you're up against? Being able to take accurate inventory about anything often dispels your discouragement in the first place. Sometimes you get man, this is going to be a lot to deal with. And then you actually take the time to think it through and take the inventory, and you made this Gila monster a dragon. And it's not even all that serious. And it allows you to actually tackle things. And then sometimes it is the dragon. But then you start looking at when you have all the parts in place, okay, maybe this isn't a fix in one day, but if I do this, and then you start building a plan, start getting strategic. So taking inventory is such a vital thing, especially for men.
Look, this is really quick, Art. This is how you know Tim is a vet to the Men's Circle. We ain't even asked what the topic means to you yet. He already shared what the topic means to him. Art, I'm going to fall back to you really quick. When you seen this topic, taking inventory, and I try to put a little bit of a description in the email that I send with the link, but what came to your mind? What did you think about when this topic came up about taking inventory? You're on mute, Art.
Just the overall taking inventory of yourself, of you as a dad, as a brother, as a cousin, as a homie, just you in general. What is you? How do you get to where you need to be and how you need to be and how you can overcome whatever life's obstacles, you know what I mean? Because even though you guys are separate, and I barely know Tim, you know, I know him off of here, but it's just no matter what, there's like a puzzle. No matter what, we just kind of, in a sense, understand each other because we match up with our experiences, but yet we've never ran into each other before, you know. But just taking inventory on you as a person. That's my thought when I saw that.
No, I actually like that. For me, when I was thinking about this topic, I didn't even think about the self inventory. When I was thinking about the topic, I was thinking more, if I was including myself, I was thinking more in the aspect of taking inventory of how I show up in people's lives, right? Like, how am I showing up in people's lives? And not only that, the other part of that inventory is the check and the balance of how are they showing up in my life. When I was in California, and I think it was my last visit because I was there for about 2 weeks. I returned back home to Utah. I was thinking about the dynamic of that, like, I didn't have, though I was there for 2 weeks, I didn't have a lot of time to see people. And so I really had to take this inventory on, like, who am I going to see and who am I not going to see? Like, I want to see my godkids. Okay, those people are top tier priorities for me to see. I'm there to see my kids, so I'm obviously going to see them. But there were people like, oh, let me know if you have time to get together for lunch. Let me know if you have time to get together for dinner. Let me know. And I was like, yeah, I'm not really out here for that right now. Like, I'm taking that inventory because I know how I show up for the most part in people's lives because I'm a compassionate, caring person, and I believe in building deep relationships. So I know how I show up. But when I start to feel, I'm going to say slighted, when I start to feel slighted in how I show up in people's lives versus how they are showing me that they're willing to show up in my life, and I don't feel like those are in alignment with each other, all of a sudden I got to take a step back and take that inventory check for myself. And so for me, this topic is really about looking at those relationships that either I've had to let go in the past because they were no longer in alignment. And Tim and I grew up together since first grade. So he and I both had a circle of friends that are not necessarily, that circle is not as big as it was when we were children growing up. And so for me, looking at those moments where I've had to, like, get rid of outdated inventory because I don't appreciate, I don't feel appreciated, and I don't appreciate how it's showing up in my life. Like, I don't smoke. I'm not like a thug type person. I will fight you, but I'm not a thug person, right? So if I had friends who decided to go down that thug route or that route where they got to be the hardest man in the room, I can't be involved in that circle. And I got to take inventory and realize that merchandise for the, oh my gosh, I just forgot the word, but that merchandise is no longer valuable in the store for the store of myself. And I don't want to sell that anymore. So I have to get it out of my inventory.
Right. I was going to say, you got to do that inventory and you got to make sure, like, sometimes you get to a place where you have some things to lose and you can't keep hanging around those that don't got nothing to lose because they move in their way. And usually when people don't got anything to lose, they're not really considerate about what you got going on. Right. So they'll conduct themselves in a way that they always do. It's not like they're going to look out for you. So I think you bring up a really good point with the human, the relationship aspect, because you do get to like not to make it all like business-like, but it does get like to be like an ROI, right? Like, what is the rate of what is the rate of return? What is my return on investment? And I got this saying, man, like, if I feel like I care more than I should, and I feel like I'm way invested, and then the one time that's one of the things I got to get better at, because I'm quick to like eliminate and be like, yep, it's all, I got it, I'm on my own. But that's something that I got to get better at, because I don't think am I right all those times? Probably not. Am I right enough of those times? Probably, but not to be. You can't be absolute with something like that. but it is healthy to take that inventory to see, okay, because those people show up and you could check them pretty quick. You know what I mean? Like, like, okay, every time I'm out here, you want to be a time vampire to me and have me come out and have this lunch and stuff with you. But when I'm out of sight, I'm out of your mind.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, so who am I having that lunch and dinner for? Is that for the both of us? Is that for just you? Or is it just me? Because it feels like that's just for you at this point. You know?
Right.
So you bring up an interesting means. It's very interesting.
Yeah. No, that you're right. There are those time vampires that will take up all your time. And it's hard because I feel like as men, we heavily rely on logic. Like we're emotional, we have emotions, but we heavily rely on logic. So when it logically doesn't make sense, we're just like, new rule. And it's like a broad stroke rule. Hey, I don't mess with anybody who chews with their mouth open. Like broad stroke. Right? So you're on mute, Tim. What'd you say?
I'm just, I'm doing your hype man ad-libbing in the background. You're out of here. Get the hell out. You're cut off. Yeah, you do. I think that's a very poignant thing that you make is the we are logic based. We're problem solvers. So if we see something and it's like, for us, like for you, I think where you run into that is you're in your head, you're like, I need to know what this is for. I need to make it make sense to me because I'm not out here to waste time. That's why you considered it a waste of time.
Yep.
But to that person probably wanted to still feel connected to you. But we're in a small world. You can feel connected in a whole bunch of ways. Why I gotta wait till I'm out here and my time is precious.
Right.
Some people just need that reassurance because subconsciously it does say that they're an important person when somebody's only out here for 2 weeks and they're choosing to spend time with me. I must be pretty important. So that's what I mean when I'm like, who is that really for? You or them, No,
you're right. And I've experienced that living out here in Utah where I'm almost 700 miles away from where I grew up at. And you find out quickly who's willing to make that sacrifice. And I think about the people that I'm closest to, and there's some people that I'm close to that haven't come out to Utah to visit. And it doesn't mean that we're not close. We still have a bond and a relationship. But there's other people who it's like, okay, when I was convenient in California, you were willing to press that time. Now that I'm inconvenient and I live in Utah and that requires a round trip airfare ticket or some extreme cost in gas, a lot of people are not willing to make that investment. That's what I'm going to call it, that investment. And it allows you to really truly take that inventory. Like I said, going out this time, priority was to see my kids and my godkids. And then I was there for some business meetings, but it wasn't, oh, I have to see these people. But there are some people that I squeeze into the time that I have, but it was like 2 people. That was it. And it was like, hey, sorry, I can't get to anybody else. But hey, I'm available out here in Utah. Anytime you want to catch a flight, holla at your boy and we can figure out what that flight schedule looks like and plan the time for you to be out here. And I've had people, I mean, Tim's been out to Utah 2 or 3 times now. 3 times. So
that's a homie.
Right. So it's like you're muted still, Tim.
I was gonna say I wanted to go out there permanently. I want to be like I came back out to California 3 times. Right. But that's a tale for another time.
No, but it's that investment that a person is willing to make that says, hey, this relationship, going back to what you said, Tim, is important to me for us. Not this lunch makes me feel like I'm important to you. So look at Billy had lunch with me while he was in town and he only had 3 days to be here. No. This is something that's important for me, for us. And when it's for me, for us, now all of a sudden I make the investments that show that my inventory, when you go to take that inventory, hey, this isn't a product that I want to get rid of. This isn't a relationship that I want to get rid of. This is something that is edifying for both me and the party. Art, what's your thoughts?
Well, it's funny you say that because when I recently, of course, you know, I was in Utah for close to about 15, 17 years around there, good estimate, and I'd always come down to California, visit the family out in LA County, and you know, family was in LA County. You know, my dad's side and mom's side was in Riverside County, and you know, everyone's like, "Hey, I hear you're in town. Come to my house." So it's like, all right, cool. You know, I'll visit you. I only got like 2 or 3 days because I'm here Friday and I leave early or late Sunday. You know what I mean? And I'll get out there and visit a cousin, and it's like, hey, you know what? I'll be here for a couple hours, and then I got to go visit someone else. You know, my godmother or grandparent or something, and they get mad. Like, oh, then why did you just come if you just didn't come for an hour or two? And it's like, well, obviously you're not understanding it. You know, I'm kind of stricken by a time limit here. You know, my intentions were to visit my grandmother or my godmother, my mom, my dad. You know, that was my main focus for a birthday or a certain reason. But then I come up in a sense like the bad guy because I didn't take time to sit at their house, something that was kind of outside of the plan. But it's like, why do you have to look at it like that? You know, I'm trying to be there for as many of the people as I can that make me feel welcome, you know. But it just gets to the point where like, am I really welcome, or just more like a show, or is this kind of like why you throwing a little there like a, you know, guilty conscience, or you know, something to that fact where it's like, you know, I'm the one on a time limit. Like, how many times have you visited me? You know what I mean?
Right. I don't live here. I am visiting here. But you're right on that, in scope and out of scope, right? Like this visit to you is outside of the scope of why I'm actually here. But in order to tell you and show you through action that you're important to me, I took this project outside of scope to visit you, but I have limited time. And so it goes back to what Tim was saying. Who is this really for? Because I stayed for an hour, which should have shown you that you were important to me, but it didn't show you or make you feel like you were important enough. Right. So now you're upset with me because I didn't stroke that ego, and women and men have egos, but I didn't stroke that ego enough to make you feel like, yeah, look, he was going to go and visit his grandma, but he stayed here with me for the day. And now he's not going to go and see his grandmother. No, I'm going to stay in the scope of why I'm here. That'd be like me going on when Chastity and I went on a vacation or for our honeymoon. We're in the Bahamas, and she was like, are you going to have a problem unplugging? No, I'm not. Because we're here on our honeymoon. I have zero problem unplugging because the scope of this trip is not do work for my employer, do work for First Row. The scope of this trip is to develop and cultivate a marriage through spending time with one another. And so that's what the trip was. And when we got back, she was like, I'm surprised you were able to unplug so easily. Well, it was inside the scope of what we were doing. Now, if I'm sitting here in the basement working on something, or I upstairs and I get an idea that's First Row related, I might leave the room that we're in to come down and work on that idea on my laptop. But on our honeymoon, yeah, I mean, you might get like a footnote, hey, don't forget this thought, and then that's it. But I'm not going to, well, let me take 3 hours of this day to work on First Row stuff. Let me take 3 hours of this day to work on my employer stuff. I'm not doing any of that. So yeah, I think sometimes that comes from the person's ego not being sedated. It's almost like if you were starving, right? And then somebody gave you a spoonful of soup. I mean, it's food, right? it has calories, but I'm starving. So that spoonful of soup,
it's not going to work. You need to give me steak.
It is not.
But there's a whole kitchen back there where they could cook for themselves and make plans to come out and see you. They could go in that kitchen, whip up an itinerary to get out to Utah to come visit. You know what I'm saying? So it's funny because I feel like me and you are on opposite sides of the same coin. And you're calibrating like to bring your level of committing to others down. And I'm trying to calibrate to bring mine up because you're a natural networker. You're a connector of people. And so part of you might feel a little bit of internal guilt when you put somebody on the shelf because you know that's not necessarily in your default nature. But when time is of the essence and decisions got to be made, it's like you're a coach on a basketball team. You might love these kids to death, but there's 16 out here. There's only 12 roster spots, so somebody's gonna get cut. So it is a little bit probably out your norm, and it's probably like a two-way trigger because it triggers you, but then you're like, man, how you getting triggered in the first place when I'm going out my way for you? Then it's like a double dare. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Bam!
Yeah, it's like a physical challenge, right? Like you know, now all of a sudden you start digging into things, like you going into the little nose to try to find the flag on double dare. Like, how did I get here, and is it worth it? But I think that's a lot of what it is. Because think about when you come out, right? And this probably goes for you too. As you said, it's art, right? I'm sorry, art, right? So probably goes for you too. When you go to visit family and stuff, what ends up happening? Phones come out, pictures come out. Look who came to visit me today. My brother from another mother, the best cousin ever. You know what I'm saying? And that's like that social currency, man. So it's some people care. Like, I think I need to get better at caring more about what other people think. But I think the social norm is I think we need to get better at caring less about what people think. Because people care way too much about how they appear and not about how they are. And this usually is a reflection of that, where they're like, oh, look at this so much. And then what do? Like, you haven't shared. I'm not talking out of turn with some of your visits, Billy. I'm just going to guess. I'm guessing it's, let me tell you what's been up with me since you've been away. And it's like an hour of me hearing all your stories. You know what I mean? And it's like, okay.
Yeah, and it's fun. Sorry to interrupt, bro, but it just goes. It goes to like it adds to. You tell them, hey, I'm not gonna be able to do this. Oh, well, why not? You know, it's kind of messed up. You're here and you didn't even bother. And it's like, no, well, you know what? This is what I got going on, and sorry, you're kind of opposite of where I need to be. Oh, why do you have to make it sound so rude? No, it's not being rude. It's just being straight out. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, people have gone to the point where being straight out is disrespectful.
Right. You got to approach that a different way. No.
Yeah.
I mean, I can approach it a different way. You'll never know I was here. How about that? Like, that's where I've had to get with some people where it's like, look, I don't owe you my time. Like, and I'm telling you all this all the time. Like, I'm not spending my heartbeats on something you want me to be. My heartbeats are my currency. As many times as this thing's gonna beat is as many times as it's gonna be. And every time that it beats and I do something that is not what I want to do for the approval of something that somebody else wants me to do, I'm wasting my currency. So I'm basically doubling up with your currency because you got me doing what you want me to do and you got me doing what you want to do. No, we're not doubling up that currency. I'm gonna spend my currency. You're gonna spend your currency.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes, honestly, things just don't work out on timing.
Yeah, it doesn't. And it's not they being rude or disrespectful. It's just unfortunately it doesn't, because they have situations like me. The people I'm gonna go visit, and even them, like when I go visit my parents or whatever, I don't even tell them. I just show up. Get there. Plans work out better when you don't make those plans. And I just say, hey, out of courtesy, don't tell nobody I'm here. Don't take no pictures. We will save our pictures for our own memory, because like sometimes my wife, Heidi, and my sisters were like, hey, how come you're always putting BS on Facebook? And I tell them, I was like, well, you know what? At first, I used to put up a lot of stuff on Facebook personally. But now I just put BS, because if you, Billy, are claiming to be my friend, my family, my blood, right? You're going to pick up that phone and say, hey, man, what you been up to? Hey, let me talk to Heidi. Hey, let me talk to your little girl. Or, hey, man, this is what we got going on. You know what I mean? It's like for the little that I've known you, I probably carry, sad to say, you know what I mean? I probably, not that I know you, but what I'm gonna say, what I'm about to say is sad to say, but it's like I probably have a better bond, a better relationship with you than what I do with my brother. You know what I mean? It's sad, but that's just the way I see it. You know what I mean? I've had more communication, more into depth conversations with you and Chas. You know what I mean? That I've ever had, with my siblings.
Right.
Yeah, it's one of those things. As human beings, we try not to, but we tend to take things for granted. And those familiar relationships, man, they just assume that they don't require any maintenance, because you don't have to divorce a sibling. You can't divorce a sibling. But you have like an obligation. So it's almost like you get teleported, like to back in the day when your parents used to make you go out and hang out with each other. Like some of that's still there. You know what I mean? And it's like the residue of that is like, it's funny because in a way you kind of subconsciously do take that inventory of who you're going to see. Because when you're coming out, you let the people know ahead of time that you want to see that, hey, I'm going to be out there on this week. You know what I'm saying? But everybody else, subconsciously, you've already kind of harvested that. So it's people take things for granted, man, and they have a hard time accepting that they're not the most important person in everybody's world. And the social media thing, man, we talked about this in other men's circles. I'm sorry about the wind if it's getting y'all, but the social media has really, really messed up social skills. People don't got them no more. Even like where it started to really start to die was with the text message. Because back in the day, you get somebody on the phone, they ask you a question, you're on the spot. You got to answer that question. You got to talk to them. Now, they send a text, a simple question. Let me think on that and simmer on that and craft the most intricate response 4 hours from now.
Right.
And it's like when you're sitting across from somebody, you don't get a chance to do that. And then they wonder why when they're interviewing for positions or they're talking to upper management and they get asked these questions and they don't, how people don't know how to act. That's the reason is social media is completely undercutting social skill. And that's not exempt from your familial relationships. Your brother, I got one of those too. I got sisters that I'm super close with that they'll go months without talking to me just because they assume that's what it's at. You know what I mean? Or that's what it's supposed to be. And then you chase that for a while, then you have that, hey, listen, I put the effort in. I made the last 2 attempts. It's on them. And then you come up with these logical rules that Billy was talking about earlier. But yeah, you're not alone. And I think that's that's the importance of the men's circle. So, I mean, when we really think about the men's circle, there's so many people like us that don't know there's so many people like us.
Right.
And they think they're all alone, that they're going through these. And you, like, I seen a real thread of these people saying, if you needed something, who would you contact? All these men are saying, absolutely nobody. I got nobody. Because that has been, like you said at the beginning, Art, that it's been frowned upon for years to like people think you're a certain type of way just because you vocalize something. So you were all bringing up some great points.
No, definitely. And going back to something else you said, Art, in regards to like that relationship, when you say, I feel like you and I are closer than my brother. I actually had this conversation with my wife while we were on our honeymoon, because she was like, I was observing her relationship with her mother, or my mother-in-law, our mother. And when we were getting ready to leave to go and like leave the country, she's like, hey, Mom, this is where we're going. This is our flight itinerary. This is where we're staying at, this, that, and the other, right? And I was explaining to her, she was like, hey, what's going on, Shamar? I was explaining to her that I see that's why she's confused with my relationship with my family, like my immediate family. I was like, because my mother doesn't know where I'm at. She knows we went to the Bahamas, but she doesn't know where we're staying at. My sister doesn't know. My dad doesn't know. My brother doesn't know. My sister doesn't know. The 5 people in my immediate family, 4 people, I'm the 5th, in my immediate family don't know where I'm at. I said, but Tim knows where I'm at. Actually, Art, you knew where we were at. Like I said, and that for me arose out of when I was young. I started taking inventory, when I was extremely young, I started taking inventory. And part of the challenges in the household that I grew up with was like, hey, there's some areas where I wasn't supported in my household as a child. And because I wasn't supported, instead of trying to beg and plead for that support internally in the family, I outsourced. I was like, I'm gonna be at Tim's house. My house was 3 doors away from our elementary school. I would walk 4 blocks in the wrong direction to Tim's house, hang out with him, sometimes eat chorizos and papas in the morning, and then a fried egg.
Hey, Shamar sometimes too. What's up, Shamar?
Play a video game, and then we walk to school. Like, that was how I outsourced that family support, that family dynamic that I needed as a child. And so now as an adult, I've carried that for 30, 40 years now. Shoot, Tim and I, we've been friends almost 4 years shy, so 36 years. So we've been friends for quite a long time, right?
And at that point, you guys are family, man. You guys are friends.
Exactly. like
you guys almost got the same eye color.
But so because of that, I realized that I realized for me, taking inventory is extremely important, because for me at this point, like you said, Art, I've now got to handpick who my family is. Like I got cousins that I don't even know, but I know more people in Tim's family than I probably know sometimes on different sides of my family. Like, that's wild, and it's sad. I'm gonna say it's sad that I don't know my own family, but the outcome is because of that process of taking inventory, I've been able to really be able to hand select, which really allows you to hand curate what your relationships are, who your family really is. Because they always say, oh, well, family is blood. Not always. There's some people that I'm blood related to that I won't interact with. If they call me today, I will be like, hello, this is who? Nah, I ain't got time. Click. Like, because of that inventory taking, I have made the decision that according to the inventory space that I have, the capacity that I have, and the inventory that I want to keep, I don't have space for this. I don't. And the other aspect of that is when you say, Tim, about a lot of men being out here not realizing, and I would like to present this as a question after I say this, not realizing that there's other men out there that are struggling with the same things, right? Partly, and don't have people that they can go to. I would put some of that onus on them because you have your warehouse filled with people who ain't shit. Oops, did I say that out loud? But that's the reality. You gotta
not loud enough though. People in the back didn't hear you.
But that's the reality, is you have saturated your life with low quality, low vibrating people, and now there's no room for high quality, high competency, high vibration people to be in your life. So I would ask this question. The question I would like to ask is, what times in your life has taking inventory been critical to really, I would say, your overall health?
You want to go ahead, go Art?
No, I think Tim's got to take this one because he showed up late.
All right, so I'll make up for my tardiness. Yeah, it's, to me, there's been a couple aspects of my life. One, when I first got back from the military, going away to the military was probably the smartest thing that I've ever done, because I got to go out and really recognize and understand I can take care of myself. I could be anywhere in the world on my own and I'll figure it out. And you get a sense of confidence with that you can't buy, you can't fake. So right when I got back, taking inventory of, okay, who was there? Kids are cheering somebody on in the background. They're running relay races behind me. But anyway, like the familial part. Like, I had some family members that demanded my time when I was in front of them, but when I was away, especially when I was like, in combat and stuff, didn't get any letters from them. You know what I mean? So I'm like, all right, so you could kind of similar to what you're talking about. You could demand my time when I'm here, but when I'm away, I'm out of sight, out of mind. So you learn a little bit of that. But then you start transitioning to the space where, when I went through my divorce, I went through that too, where it's like, okay, I'm kind of in a low spot, not because of the marriage dissolving itself, but just kind of like, as you said, Billy, we're kind of logical. So I didn't want to be a statistic, and I ended up one. So I took a L. Uh, the outcome was for the best, but it doesn't, it's still a loss at the end of the day. And doing the inventory about, okay, what's important to me, you know what I mean? And then you start looking at like, who am I moving in the same circles as? And then having to have those grown-up discussions, like, as you said, our circle used to be pretty big. Now is it a circle? It's kind of like a parallelogram or something. It's not necessarily that. It's not we can't play duck duck goose. I'll put it that way. But is there animosity there? No, it's just that you move in different paths, and sometimes you got to realize that, like, they're moving in their way, I'm moving. It's like everybody's on this train station of life, and if somebody's going to Chicago, somebody's going to New York, this is where we park, and that's it, And so those times have been kind of crucial. But I want to comment real quick on, you said how people have their warehouses full of shit. Because I think that brings up another huge problem for men, is because we're so desperate, we tend to put so much investment in certain men, like Andrew Tate, Kevin Samuels, who, when you listen to them, got very, very, very smart stuff to say. But what happens is these were also men that thought that nobody paid attention to them. Now, when they see they're getting attention, they're going to say a little bit of things off the cuff to be a little bit radical and generate clicks, because now all of a sudden they're in the clicks business. So it's crazy how where it's like the faucet is cut off of people paying attention to us, but once that faucet is cut on, how addicting it can be. So that's pretty much the points of my life where I took inventory, were when things were going great and when things were going bad. And when changes were made. Like, when you moved to Utah, it wasn't like, well, there goes me and Billy's relationship. That wasn't even a thought. It was like, all right, how long are you going to be there? How long are you going to, okay, I'll tell you what, let's get out there for 4th of July. Let's start making that plan. And then, the beauty of technology is we get to connect. We play the game. We connect a few times a week. So it doesn't necessarily feel as distant as 700 miles really is. So with that said, I think I paid my penance now, Art. I'll kick it to you.
No, you're good, man. You're good. It's a good story. There was a couple of statements you made there that I'm just like, yeah, that was one of my my life decisions, life changing decisions, whatever it was, when I got back, right? Even before that, even more before I left, you have your pre-mob stuff that you're about to leave, and everybody comes over. Very few people. My immediate family came out to visit. Came from California up to Utah. They were there showing some support. But even that, very minimal cousins calling or sending texts or whatever, because it's crazy. I never understood. I never realized until you're actually out in the field where how much value a handwritten letter is from a family member. It's like, whoa, you want to, even though you read it once, you want to read it again. You know what I mean? It's weird. I've never had that feeling. But that was one when I've kind of like took inventory of myself and realized certain stuff, right? The other one is, again, the multiple trips to and from California, Utah, right, when I lived there. But the very first one is I used to work in law enforcement, and I saw, growing up, my parents were always like, hey, watch out for your friends. Those are the ones that are going to betray you. And I've always stuck with that, where I really never had friends, right? I've had acquaintances, classmates, and even that, my best friend today, two of my best friends, but one of them, we used to be enemies and from junior, in high school, we used to, go down, get down, and now we're best friends, But even that is just, when I was working in law enforcement, I realized it's not the friends you got to worry about. It's the family. The family is the one that gets you. The family is the one that betrays you. And those are the ones that hurt you. and that was the first ever time I actually ever, took inventory without even knowing, But again, now here being in Florida, like very few have a cousin that's going to come out and visit, and it's just she's a little older than me, and I'm just like, wow, out of all the cousins, this one's always the one that I least think about, and she's always the first one coming through. You know what I mean? And it's like you tend to again take a look at your warehouse and see who you got positioned where, and you kind of start making movements. You know what I mean? Based off the actions. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of stuff that Tim you hit on. And I'm just like, oh snap, okay, I like this guy.
No, I definitely understand that, and I think there are moments in that where it is critical to take inventory. So I used to take my inventory at the beginning of every year, beginning and or end of every year, and I started probably before then. But what really caused me to start taking inventory was social media. Social media caused me to start taking inventory. If I would look at your social media and all I constantly seen were things that were kind of out of alignment with where I wanted to go in life. Like, you can't be, maybe in your 20s you could be twerking, right? Maybe in your 20s you could be freaknik in the club, but in your 30s and 40s, I'm like, yo, at what point are we going to grow up? It's almost like Tim. I don't know if you remember the front when we were in the hood over on South and I think it's Rolinda, where the front used to be. Right, these people that were hanging out in front of the liquor store on the front were people that my father went to school with, and they were hanging out at that liquor store when my father was a kid, and they were still hanging out there when I was a kid. Like, what the hell are we doing? We can't just hang out in front of the liquor store for the entirety of our life. That's not an option for me.
It's like, when are you gonna break that cycle?
Right. When are we gonna break that cycle, and when are we going to expect growth from ourselves? Right. And so that's where I started actually taking inventory, is like, yo, like, this person is not really talking about nothing. This person, and it wasn't like their vernacular. Like, you could cuss, you could use slang. That wasn't what it was. But if you were just talking about nothing, in my opinion, nothing, I was like, I don't want nothing people in my life. And there's an aspect about this that's really important. And it's going to be my next question is sometimes what happens, thinking about Tim and I now not being able to play Duck, Duck, Goose because we ain't got enough people, right? Sometimes because of the history that we have with people, we hold on to inventory. It'd be like me still having my Nintendo Entertainment System from when I don't even remember what age I was, 8 to 12. I don't know what age I was when the Nintendo Entertainment System came out. But it'd be like me still having that, holding on to that, because you were my first system. You taught me through Duck Hunt and Mario and all these other things, right? I'm holding on to this device that I'm never going to use. And there's not even a way for me to add value to it, right? And so we hold on to these loyalties sometimes from childhood, or I've known Tim for 36 years. It's easy to hold on to that because it's 36 years. But just like Tim said, if I'm on a train to Chicago and you're on a train to California, we're going to have to eventually part ways. I don't foresee our relationship becoming that because we're typically both growth-minded people. But if at one point one of us stagnates out, I can see two things happening. The first thing is a conversation. Hey, what's going on, man? You seem like you're dead in the water. What's up with the growth? What happened? We were both doing really good, and now I'm seeing you're flatlining. That's the first conversation that happens. And that is a loyalty conversation, right? But then after that, if I'm the one who's flattened out or plateaued out, if I choose to stay on that plateau, now the next conversation is a conversation Tim has with himself. Okay, Ro doesn't seem like he's interested in growing anymore beyond this point. Is that something that I can accept in my inventory, or is that something that I'm going to go ahead and have to let go out of the warehouse? Those conversations we're not having with ourselves, and I think it comes back to Tim, that loneliness aspect. Well, shit, I only got 3 people. So if I let go of one, now I only got 2. Yeah, but you make room to get another third one if you let go of the one that's not doing anything. So I'll yield with that.
Yeah, Art, you brought something up earlier, man, that kind of plays right into this. Like a lot of those things, like those toxic relationships we hold on to, there's a lot of times they're out of guilt, man. Like you're like, how many times have you heard? And this isn't necessarily with me, but I've been around people where I've heard them say like, "Man, but that's your mom, that's your dad, that's your sister, that's your brother, that's your cousin. You can't cut them out like that." And I'm over here thinking, well, if that's them to them, they should have known better than anybody not to do that to them. So, you could tell me that's like don't report that. Don't blame your dad for that. Don't hold him accountable for that. He's your dad at the end of the day. Well, yeah, at the end of the day, he's my dad, but I don't have to blindly hold on to something if it's just so far out of alignment. But you hit on that earlier, Art, which is those familiar relationships, man. A lot of the toxic relationships you have are out of guilt. I seen something recently, Billy. I think I might have sent it to you. This guy, he went on a rant, and I was like, "This is my kind of guy. He needs to come on the men's circle." He was talking about everybody talks about their day ones. He was like, "Man, I'm like, fuck them day ones." He was like, "Day ones are people you've been forced upon." You know what I mean? Like your mom had a friend who had a kid your age, and y'all got put together, and you're play cousins, and you don't know a memory without this person. It was kind of forced upon you. He was like, "I'm more focused on the day twos because the days twos are who you choose, and that's who you choose to be around. That's more of an indicator of who you are than your day ones." And he said it's funny because day ones tend to use that loyalty to get you to do things you don't want to do, but the day twos never think to go that route in the first place. And I was like, damn, that's some knowledge being kicked there. But I think you hit on some good things, both of you earlier, especially you, Art, with the guilt thing, and you experienced it. So there you go.
Well, it's a trip. You just said right now when you were talking about days. It's day one, day two. The other day I saw on FB, I saw somebody put up a post saying, if we were to start thinking instead of saying, "Oh, it's another day," and start thinking more, it's one less day, we'd probably start living life to our fullest. And I was like, oh shoot, I like that. If we start living to like, all right, this is one last day of life on this planet, you kind of tend to see things more like, all right, I'm really going to live life now. I'm really going to be transitioning myself to enjoy where I'm at, what I'm doing, and what it is I want to do.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. So in my book, I talked about that as the invisible shot clock, right? Where we don't think in terms of counting down. We think in terms of counting up. Oh, well, tomorrow's another day. Yeah, that's adding. That's addition. Tomorrow's one less day. If I make it through the day, that's one less day. That's subtraction. And when you start really looking at your invisible shot clock, realizing, hey, I don't know how much time I got on this. You stop allowing things like, oh, I gotta be loyal. And I've always been confused by this loyalty concept because I'm like, there is no situation in life that should require me to be loyal to somebody else that requires me to also betray myself. Because if I'm going to be loyal to anything, anybody, first person's me. I'm not secondary in my loyalty scheme. I am primary. So I think it's interesting how loyalty can be weaponized against us and how it can hurt us. And I think as I began to get away from, I think a good example of this, get away from the guilt, right? As I began to get away from the guilt, what I started really being able to connect with is who am I as a person? And so my wife and I were having this conversation, and in the conversation, she tells me that I didn't consider her. And my hearing of her saying I didn't consider her was, I'm an inconsiderate person. And that's not what she said, but that's what I heard. And so that was my reaction to that.
Oh, yeah.
So in my mind, it's like, oh, so I'm inconsiderate. Oh, well, let me show you what inconsideration looks like, right? Which is another toxic, bad path to go down. But I think in that loyalty, we sometimes trick ourselves to say, well, if I don't do it, then do I really care for them and do I really value them? Look, acts of service don't denote care or value. You can take this in one night stand. Somebody sleeping with you for one night is not mean you're valuable, right? You could take this in homeless situations. Somebody giving money to homeless doesn't mean that they care about the homeless. They might just want the tax deduction, right? So all these different things where we think our actions, because love is an action, right? They say love is a verb. We think that it's specific verbs, but it's really, hey, look, I'm doing, it's choices. That's the verb. You're making a choice. I'm making this choice, and that is the verb that is displaying love to you via my method of communication. Now, sometimes those don't align with what people want to receive, and that's a different story. But at the end of the day, when it comes to our loyalty and allowing that loyalty to hurt us, or allowing that loyalty to, let's not even use the word hurt, allowing that loyalty to detour us from where we're trying to go, I'm letting y'all know now, my loyalty is to me. This is why I do First Row. This is why I do what I do. This is why the Legacy Conference is important to me. My loyalty is to me, and it's about me doing the things that are important to me. Because at the end of the day, like I said, them heartbeats, that's my currency. What you got, Tim?
I was gonna say that's why you can't be a gangbanger. But anyway, because you know, hey, what I look like taking 25 years for you. But anyway, it's funny how that the loyalty gets weaponized. People don't even realize where that comes from. That's the big boss tells you don't want snitching because they know it's ultimately that's who the feds want. They want the person in charge, and they discourage the snitching. Other people will pay the price for their crimes. They get to still live fat cat, high horse in it. But these are all some great points. It's funny because you said that first thing when you were talking about the decreasing of your time. I always think of like life as like this, you're ascending this mountain, right? You're ascending in life. But now it's more along the lines of like you're parachuting down and the ground's getting closer a little bit more each day. And how do you want to spend that time in the air? You know, do you want to spend it in, I think all of us, and I've only had the pleasure of meeting Art a few times on here, but I think all of us are to a point where we're past these superficial social media. I'm going to make this post just for you to chime in and tell me how great you think my idea was, or how you agree with what I said, or you vehemently disagree with what I said, whatever. We're kind of past that. That's kind of surface level stuff. And it is kind of heartbreaking too, because you see some of these things, you see people like our age doing things that it's like, man, are we past that? Like, why are we still doing that? Like, we're too grown for all that. And it gets a little bit disheartening. But then again, those people, their bus was heading, or their train was heading to Fresno. Mine was heading somewhere else. So they're in their own place, you know? But again, that doesn't make anybody a bad person. It just, man, we're all on different paths. And the taking inventory piece is critical because, like you said, you only got so many beats on this. You know, you only got so many days left. How do you want to spend them? And
True.
If you're spending them because you feel bad, that's not a way to spend your time. You should want to spend the time. So even if you're spending time for somebody out of guilt, you probably need to think about that, because in a way you're cheating them. That's almost being like in a marriage and you don't love the woman. You're just doing it because you feel bad to break her heart. She ain't getting the love that she deserves, so cut her free.
Right.
Sometimes you got to think of it like that. So great points, man. I seen Bruce in the chat, man. I want to see Bruce's face on the camera. He need to get up in here.
He got hours today. He said he got work hours.
I know he'd be here if he could. But yeah, I'll turn it over back to you, Billy.
No, I was thinking as you were saying that, I was thinking about your 30th birthday party. And I remember when your wife called me and said, I mean, I feel weird calling her your wife, but my sister called me and said, hey, I want to surprise my brother, or surprise your brother for his 30th birthday party. We're thinking about taking a cruise. Here's what we're going to do. can you help me get the numbers? Oh, this is so funny to me because as soon as she asked me, can you help me get the numbers to his friends that would want to go? I said a lot of people would want to go, but I'm going to tell you now, I'm going to be the only one who goes. Like, because at that point I had already taken inventory of that circle and said, yeah, some people later on in life will be in a position to go. Some people will never be in a position to go. And it's because I could clearly see with their choices. And we called people and they were, yeah, I'm going to go. Okay, we're going to get our tickets on this day. So we're all in the same part of the boat. Blasey, blah. Day comes and it's called, oh, I got to do mine next Friday. Oh, I got to do mine next. I got to do. I was like, okay, let's go ahead and get our tickets. And she was like, oh, do we want to wait maybe a week? No, we do not. We do not want to wait a week because we're just going to pay a higher price for nothing.
I mess around and be turning 50 by the time that all happens. But it's you know what's crazy about that though? This is what happens. This is how you mature in a relationship, right? Like my wife is the greatest. She always tries to think of how to make a memory, right? If she would have asked me about that, although it would have ruined the surprise, it would have got the exact result that I would have wanted anyway, which was it turned out exactly the way it should have. We had a fucking blast on that cruise. I remember we were lit in Mexico. I don't even remember how we got back on the boat, but I would have had it no other way. I was cool. I remember she was like, hey, she was like, man, I was hoping there'd be more. And I was like, listen, it's the men's circle, so I feel comfortable saying this. That's a woman's way of thinking. Let me have 19 girlfriends with all this ruckus and noise. Guys don't really need that. Give us 1 or 2, 3, maybe 3, and let's just do our thing. And 3 like-minded people, not that one person you got to babysit because they might jump off the boat when they're drunk, or people that you can kind of count on to okay, this person he's a man of a certain level of responsibility. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it turned out perfect, man. But it's funny. That's exactly, I had that in my head. I almost said what you just said about the 30th birthday. So it's funny you brought that up.
Yeah, no. And that's the loyalty aspect. People will, to their own detriment, try to be loyal to people who, again, aren't even loyal to themselves. Because here's the thing. I would always tell my sons, like, hey, look, do you think I want the best for you or the worst for you? And they're like, well, the best. So why would you, when I give you advice, do you think I would be giving you bad advice? Like, I'm going to give you something that I think is going to help you. I'm never going to give you something that's like, watch him run full speed into this wall. Hey, there's no wall there. I'm never going to do that. I'm going to always give you something to help you and to help further your success. And I would think when these people that we probably, honestly, there's only one person out of that group that we talked to about this cruise now 12 years ago that I still am in contact with. All the other ones have gone by the wayside. There's only been a couple of moments where I've reached out if a person who was in that circle maybe lost somebody who was really important to them. I will reach out and offer my condolences. But sometimes I won't even do that. Like, if I don't have a relationship with you, if it doesn't impact me, it doesn't impact me. And I'd rather not reach out to you than to reach out to you fraudulently. Honestly, that's what it is. Fraudulently, with no sincerity of intent. So I'm all for that. I do want to bring in really quick. I forgot to bring this in from the chat. Bruce says it's critical for me to take inventory before reacting to a stressful situation or decision. Absolutely. I think that's a great way to, like, is it even worth it? Before I go off the hinges, or before I try to correct, or before I try to repair, right? Before I go and get the toolbox, let me find out if I even care about this wall, or am I okay with just going and grabbing my sledgehammer and letting that wall no longer exist in the house? I'm all for that. What you got?
I'm trying, Bruce. That comment, I'm trying. I'm human. That's been something, that very thing you just commented has been something I've been working on personally for probably like 10 years. I just had my son where I have a conversation, and I tell my kids, look, I'm going to ask you nicely a couple times. I'm going to tell you you're going to do it a third time. Don't let me get to a fourth time, because by that time it's too late. It's too late. Shift's left the station. It's time to go. And he found out a hard lesson the other night, and but I always break it down to him afterwards. Listen, you understand why what happened? And he goes, yeah. And I was like, it's the same. It's funny, me and you have like a lot of similarity. Like, why do you think I did that? Do you think I get joy out of that? Or do you think I don't get joy out of that? Do you think it crushes me? And he goes, and he's honest when he says, I don't think that you like that. I was like, I don't. I don't like having to grill you for you not listening. I was like, but I'll be damned if I raise somebody that's just going to be a victim in this world and blame everybody else for their problems, because you're not going to be a handsome little boy for very much longer. Once you become a man and you get hair on that face and bass in that voice, the world gives nothing. They give zero fucks about you. And you need to learn this stuff now. And I think that's why, when the mother is a primary relationship handler of a son, I think this is the divide that they have, is they don't prepare him for what life really is like as a man. And then it's too late, they're already in it. That's a whole other tangent. I'll kick it back to you. You triggered a nerve, Bruce. You see what you did?
Hey, Bruce is a wise man.
Oh, I do have another question that I want to ask. Let me pull Bruce's comment down. Sorry, I'm my own audio video tech. But I do have another question that I want to ask, because I do think as we get better at taking inventory, we almost get better at what we even allow to come into the warehouse, right? Like Chastity and I were talking about a comment I think I have made on the men's circle about there being attractive women at the resort that we went to. And she was like, well, which ones were attractive? And I was like, I don't know. It ain't like I've burned any of these women in my head. I ain't probably ever gonna see these women ever again in my life. Like,
hey, you should have pulled out your Palm Pilot, bro.
Like, I took this picture this one. But I told her, I said, this is the thing. I said, I think women have convinced themselves that attraction is only physical for men. There's definitely probably women that men would sleep with that they wouldn't have a relationship with. I think that has been statistically and factually proven at this point in life, right? But at the age that I am now, you could be as drop dead gorgeous as you want to be. You're not worth what I've already invested in, right? Because I've made an investment in my marriage. And that investment it's important for me to protect it. Because other than that, then what the hell was I doing investing in it for? I could have just saved my coins or saved my money that I was investing in it and just kept it to myself. So when we were looking at this, when I was talking about and giving her an example, there was one lady there at the resort that was alone. And I was just like, ooh, like she was physically a pretty person, but I was like, her energy feels, like the heck no. And I was like, there's a reason she's at this resort by herself alone. There's a reason. And lo and behold, Chastity comes to the table. She's like, oh my God, that girl was just so rude. And I was like, who? And she was like, this girl right here. I was like, oh yeah, she was sitting next to us while we were having dinner the other day. And I was like, she was sitting by herself. And I said, and there's probably a reason that she was sitting by herself. Because whereas, we'll say 1.0 version of man was just women are women, they're crazy, and we accept that, right? Okay. Version 2.0 says, well, women are women, but we don't have to accept the volatility of attitude. We don't have to accept the I'm going to say this word, the selfishness of attitude, because men get told we're selfish because we cheat, right? You go to all these different women and you're selfish because you're not staying faithful to your relationship. But I don't think women are ever told, at least in what I've seen, I don't feel like women are ever told that, hey, yo, that was really selfish of you. That was really selfish of you for you to have an attitude, take it out on me, and then come back to me and be mad at me for responding in kind. That's a selfish act. So basically, you want me to be your not your sounding board, but basically your little punching bag. I'm supposed to take all these hits, and then I'm just supposed to sit there and swing and do nothing. Nah, that's not 2.0. Man doesn't sit there.
Don't say that I love you.
Yeah, right, babe. You're the best. Nah, you need to fix your attitude. Because I love you, because we're going back to that verb, because I love you, I'm going to tell you that. If I didn't love you, I'd just leave and go and hang out with a chick who ain't got the attitude you got right now. Like, I think that where we allow that loyalty to hurt us is we tell ourselves that I can't say this and I can't say that, so I got to sit here and suffer in silence. I got to sit here and just take it. And there's been times where I've seen numerous men, they have these coping mechanisms. And I always tell people that coping mechanisms are a great temporary tool. They will help you get through a stressful event, but they are not the solution to what caused the stressful event. At some point, you got to move away from coping mechanisms and move into more structured, permanent solutions, or long-term solutions, because probably no solution is permanent, but more structured, long-term solutions. But I feel like when it comes to taking that inventory, and as you become more of a student of what you're willing to accept and what you're not willing to accept, I can tell you right now, there will probably never be a man on the men's circle, at least on the panel, that has the invite to be on the entire segment. There will probably never be a man who has kids who's a deadbeat dad. Because my inventory, I don't have space for that in my inventory. And because first row is a part of my inventory, first row don't have space for that in its inventory either. Now, if there's a man who's a deadbeat dad and he's trying to get his life together and he's trying to say, how do I get back on track, and how do I become a father, and how do I re-engage with my children? That man, there's room for that kind of inventory. But just, I ain't gonna take care of my kids, absolutely no space for that. And that's that practice.
Right, the accountability piece, right? If you're willing to take inventory, take accountability for where you're at and where you want to go, and take strides and actions to get there, that's always welcome, because nobody's story's ever written in stone, you know? But it's funny, I had a similar conversation with my wife, and to give you a little bit of backstory, my sister just recently got divorced. She was with her husband for 26 years. 26 years. And they got divorced. And turns out she wasn't happy for a long time and all this stuff, right? And, you know, he stepped out and all this stuff. And my wife asked me, she was like, and I said, yeah. And his sons don't want to talk to him now. I said, see right there? That's a big reason why I would never do that. And she goes, like a woman does, she goes, is that the only reason? Well, no. Obviously, I love and I care about you, but to have my kids hate me would hurt. That'd be something that I can't. Because there's a difference when they look at you like, oh, man, there's dad. And then they look at you like, oh, yeah, that's dad. Like, it's the same thing, but the tone is just deafening. But I told her that, and she goes, oh, so you wouldn't step out or anything like that? And I was like, well, no. I was like, I'm at the age that I'm at now, I don't give a damn how fine some woman is. There's more that I'm looking for than that. Like, because here's the thing about a woman, and this is where I'm at in my life now, and this is what I was trying to explain to her. You could be very good looking and get increasingly uglier as you talk words. Like every word you say, you're just like, wow, like this, she's turned into a goblin. You know what I mean? But you could be semi-attractive, and then the more you talk and the more actions that you do, all of a sudden you're like an 8 or a 9. And it's like, on first look, I wouldn't have thought that, but you're charming, you're funny. You know, one of the things that my wife was like, when was one time, what was a moment that you knew that me and you could be something serious? And I said, me and you had a disagreement. And then you obviously did some researching after the fact, and you came back and you told me I was right. Now, a lot of women would have just never brought it up again and just knew that I was right and never gave me what they call the satisfaction. But you admitted that you were wrong, and you were cool with that. And I was like, wait a minute, hold on. This is like I could have adult conversations with this person. And that's what led to everything else, is what I told her. I was like, I remember that distinctly, because I had never heard, like, you know, the old saying, every comedian's got a bit on it. You know, my wife's never wrong, you know. But my wife will tell you frequently, oh, yeah, you were wrong on that. Or I was wrong on that. And that, like, something about a person that's being accountable for themselves is just so damn attractive. Right. I don't know what that is. But when you're like, hey, you know what? I know I'm not the best, but I'm going to strive to be better. Here's my action to show that. Man, that's a whole lot better than some, you know, unknown gift for unknown reason just to say something. So it's funny that you think that way. I'll kick it over to you, Art. I'll bought you some time.
No, Bill, you came up, you know, while you were talking, there's a couple of keywords that you threw out there, and it took me back to memory lane or whatever, and it brought me back to holding people, like Tim said, accountable. You know what I mean? Where's the accountability? Where's the respect? Where's the, okay, yeah, I messed up, sorry, you know, let's try this, and, you know, admitting, you know, again, accountability. You know, when I first got divorced from my first marriage, of course, I was the jerk, I was the cheater, I was the deadbeat, I was the everything and anything, you know. So I ended up going back to California for like a sense of a reset, right? And having a one-on-one with my dad, and he says, well, it was your fault, you failed your family. And I said, what? I don't get it. It was, yeah, whatever happens in a marriage, whatever happens in a family, it's always the man's fault. And your relationship failed because of you. And I'm just like, but I wasn't the one that was stepping out. You know what I mean? I wasn't the one doing bad stuff, bad malicious stuff, you know. And it got to the point where, like, during the marriage, you know, my mom sometimes would bring it to my attention, like, hey, you're the man in the relationship. Why are you doing the man-woman role? You know, like, I understand you like to keep your house clean. I understand you want to do this for the child, but your wife has to do that. That's her job. And, you know, I tell my mom, I was like, well, you know, unfortunately, thought processes are different. You know, she works too. Why shouldn't I clean my house? Why shouldn't I help out to do some of those duties to alleviate some of those stressors? You know what I mean? Because I enjoy cleaning and I enjoy vacuuming. So why not do it? But that ended up transitioning to where, oh, well, because you were taking those two roles, you told her basically you didn't need her anymore. So that's why she stepped off. I'm just like,
any excuse. You made my life too easy, Art. I need to go find me a guy that has 6 kids from 6 different women that's gonna ruin my credit. That's what I need to do.
Yeah. And I never got that, and I never understood it. And then it goes back to that accountability. That person was, you know, never held to a standard, I guess, or whatever standard there was. It was always brought down. Why? Because she's a girl, or because she's the oldest, or whatever reasons, you know what I mean? But it's like, okay, you know, it took a while for me to inventory those things and say, no, I got lost in her breasts, I guess, you know what I mean? And I didn't see outside that picture, you know?
Right.
I didn't see, but, you know, we all learn, and we all have to learn from what we're doing. And it's with our jobs to, you know, as older men, you know, fathers, whatever you want to call it, uncles, to just say, hey, look, I highly recommend this. I highly recommend that. You should try this. You should try that. And if you don't, then I'll be here waiting for you.
Right. When it all hits the family, just realize this won't be our first cleanup, and it won't be our last.
And the messed up part about that, Art, is by the time, like, let's no disrespect to your ex-wife, but did she communicate these things to you? Probably not. She just resented you in secret. And then
she communicated all the time. It was my job to read her mind.
Right. Yeah, thanks.
Communication tactics.
Yeah, and it's I did this. I did these horrible actions because of you. Whatever. That's like the oldest trick in the book. And the problem is you can't do nothing about them. So the only way I think about it, because I have 3 girls, is I preach that going forward. If you're in a relationship with a man, or these days, it's 2023, maybe it's another woman or a they, you're in a them situation. You don't hold on to what you got, but also don't yell it at them. Take your time, figure out, okay, how do I want to word this, and say, hey, this is what's bothering me. I feel like I'm losing the connection with you because of this, and this. And then have like real grown-up conversations. But yeah, it's funny. It's always the man's fault because, you should have chose a better partner. The person can be horrible. You should have chose better. I'm like, damn, all right. Now, it's not like picking fruit. I'm not squeezing an avocado here,
Right.
But you know what I'm saying? It's like, it's always comes down to the fault of man. And the problem is our society is we condition women to think that too. So in a woman, for most women, they're never wrong. Somebody's going to come and bail up. The same speech I gave y'all about how I told my son, once you get hair on your face and bass in your voice, the world don't give a fuck about you. Women never experience that. There's always somebody there for women. There's government programs to take care of women. There's, you know what I mean? There's always safety nets to catch their flying acrobat trapeze acts. That's why they could do all these crazy stunts, because they know they're gonna fall in a net. Meanwhile, we're over here walking tight ropes on windy days. You know what I mean?
Right.
It gets. We're over here trying to navigate. I like to say men play the game of life on all Madden. You know what I mean? We're on high difficulty. And it's funny how that works. And you know what? I went through something similar, and I took inventory, and I just said, man, to hell with all that. And then what I did, how I ended up cultivating the relationship I did with my wife is I was like, okay, I never want to get married again, which that was a lie. I ended up marrying her, which was great. But at the time I was like, I'm never going to get married again. But if I get in a relationship with a woman, what do I want that to look like? And then I started picturing that. Like, I don't want to be somebody different around her than I am when I'm by myself or with my friends. And if she could get comfortable with that world, I'm like, a lot of times we see the pretty face and we change ourselves to try to keep that pretty face around. Then we get used to that pretty face. And then we start trying to be ourselves. And then we got to face up and have accountability for ourselves. Then we also sell her a bill of goods. You know what I mean? So we're not all innocent here as men either, but the difference between the men's circle and the women's Rubik's Cube is that men will say that we have some wrong in this. Women be like, well, this is another thing that men do wrong, and never say anything they do wrong. But we'll say like, okay, maybe we sold them on a bill of goods. But yeah, I'll turn it back over to you, Billy.
No, I feel you on that, and it's funny you say that willingness to not take accountability, and it's strange because it's not just an unwillingness to take accountability from the individual. There's like a support group that also won't allow them to take accountability. I remember when I was in mediation for my oldest son, and at this point, his mother had not been around for I think about 5 months. We didn't know where she was. I was taking care of my kid, living life. And she shows back up, and then we are in mediation for child custody. And I remember we're sitting there and we're talking to the mediator. And I tell the mediator, in my mind, by definition, his mother abandoned him. Like, I don't know about y'all, but if an infant who's under 2 years old doesn't have a parent taking care of them for 5 months, they die. I mean, that's not rocket science. So the fact that his mother wasn't there for 5 months, she abandoned him. And I kid you not, this mediator looks me in my face and she says, "No, Mr. Rowe, she didn't abandon him. She was trusting you to take care of the child." Oh, what? Like, not only is she not going to take accountability for it, you're going to support her in her not taking accountability. And I'm not saying because she abandoned him, she shouldn't be allowed back in his life. I'm like, but let's at least acknowledge what happened here. And so I told her, I said, I think that's interesting that you're saying that she was trusting me to take care of the child. No, I wonder why they don't call it Fathers Trusting Mothers to Take Care of the Children program. They call it the Deadbeat Dad program. Why is that? Like, when you, as an individual, it's an enablement. When you, as an individual, become accustomed to not taking accountability, and then you have others who are supporting your bullshit. And I think that's what Casual is talking about. He says Brickgate is the latest example of the lack of female accountability. If he's talking about what I think he's talking about that lady getting hit with that brick, but all that other behavior that she had prior to getting hit with a brick. Not saying getting hit with a brick. I'm not saying really anybody should get hit with a brick. But also, I don't believe that domestic violence should take place, but I do understand how it happens. Just saying. So, yeah, but that's that lack of accountability. I've never done anything to anybody. I'm all of a sudden now, woe is me. Somebody come and save me. Somebody protect me. Somebody sent something to me. I think it was my cousin sent something to me. And it was a reel about a wife talking about her husband. She was like, "Look, my husband's responsibility is not to protect women. My husband's responsibility is to protect a woman. That woman is his wife. He didn't sign up to take bullets for every woman on the planet. He signed up to protect me and our children. And if you think my husband is going to jump in front of a bullet to save some random stranger because she's a woman and doesn't have somebody who's in that role of protection for her, you're sadly mistaken. Because he's not going to die for some random stranger in order for me to be left here with our kids all alone. That's not what he signed up for. His obligation is to us. If you want somebody to protect you, then maybe you stop saying men ain't nothing, they don't do nothing, they all ain't this, they are all that. Maybe you stop saying all that and you find a man who is about some integrity and who is willing to protect you, because then he's signing up to protect you. I feel that way when I travel and I leave my wife here. When I was younger, and probably rightfully so, my concern would be like, "Oh, you leave, this chick gonna be talking to all these dudes, right?" Because the requirements for relationship weren't very high. But with my wife, I don't have a fear like, "Oh, I'm going to leave out of town. I'm going to be gone for a week. I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks. She'll be gone for a month. And she's going to be talking to every other dude in the neighborhood." I don't have that fear. What fears that I have to address are, if something happens, I'm not there as the protector. That's a completely different state of mind when you're willing to be accountable. And it's easy to be like, "Well, I wasn't there. It wasn't my fault. I was gone, but I am the husband. I am the protector of this household. So whenever I leave, hey, here's the bracelet to the gun safe. You know how to get access to the gun. It's already one in the chamber. Somebody comes in, shoot him, and I'll be on the next flight home." Like, what you got, Art?
I was gonna say the only fear I got is not monitoring the Amazon packages that are coming in, man.
Fortunately, I don't have to worry about that no more. Really quick, I did ask a question. I'm going to put the question up for you guys to take a second to think about it. But I did put a question in the chat really about, in taking inventory, how have your standards changed? Probably over now, because we're all in our 40s, over a measurable period of time. But I do want to go into the chat and bring some of the comments in. It looks like Bruce said, when taking inventory on how my standards have changed, the phrase "today's price isn't yesterday's price." Absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. That phrase comes to mind for Bruce. I already got you, Casual, on the Brickgate. Key, what's up, brother Key? He said, chimed on late, but There is power in taking the fault/accountability in every situation in your life. Otherwise, you're taking the role of a victim, which is one of the weakest positions. Then it says, as the victim, life just happens to you. A person who takes inventory and/or accountability, intentionally lives their life and chooses to change the situation for the better. Absolutely agree with you. Welcome, Kate. Tim, did you have something you wanted to share?
I was gonna say it's like the accountability piece, and we're gonna talk about this, and I could kind of lead into the standards, how my standards have changed. But the accountability piece is really, really funny. First off, Key, what a great comment. We miss you. We miss you having you on here. Thanks for commenting at least. Always got great things to add to the men's circle. But the lack of accountability from our women folk is kind of crazy. And it's enabled, like in that little situation you just gave. So basically what that mediator was telling you is if something would have happened to the kid, if someone would happen to your oldest, I'll leave his name out of it. Something would have happened to your oldest child that she just left on you, you would have been responsible for all that because she left it in charge of you. Which, what? Hey, I thought this was equal opportunity. You know what I mean? Let's both go to prison for not taking care of this, taking care of what we need to. But that's what I'm talking about is the enabling. And look no further than social media. And I know I'm bashing social media a lot, but look no further than that, man. And you see like these, like if I had a nickel for every time I seen a woman post something on Facebook, just to have all these parade of women tell her how she's right and leave him and do him dirty. And I'm like, y'all aren't qualified to comment on these people's relationship. You have no idea what actually happened. You're just saying like, and then they use that for their validation to do dumb shit. You know, oh, my friends think I should. How do your friends have an opinion on anything? Like, they have no idea what's going on here. So it's funny because as men, like we tend to hold each other accountable if you cultivate your warehouse right, as opposed to it seems like a lot of women. And that was a big thing with me with my wife is once I got cool with her, I was like, let me see what her friends are like and seeing how they interact. Because when they go out on girls trips, this is going to be in her ear. You know what I mean? This is who I need to know that, you know, are we at the same, are we going to the same destination at the train station? Do our tickets match? Or is, you know, we're going in the same direction, but, you know, she's stopping in New York, I'm heading up to Boston, you know what I mean? So it's that's how the standards has changed. You get more curious about things and you want it to align more with your life. Hey, I know soccer practice over. Go sit down for a second. That's hey. But anyway, it's the way it's affect me is it allows me to have standards for the people I keep in my life that are, you know, friends, family members, and I guess it's just that friends or family members, and then the standards in which I have my marriage on, which is taking the lessons from the first one, finding out what you want your relationship to look like, and then having standards in place to get that. I wanted a great communicator. I wanted somebody that was a woman of integrity, someone that was fun, someone that had similar interest. And you got to really test that, man, because some women, again, like how sometimes we sell a bag of goods to a woman, they'll do that to us. They'll say, hey, like, yeah, I like to be on the video game too. And then you get them in front of that controller and they got it upside down. It's like, wait a minute, were you just saying that to, like, this ain't going to work if you ain't authentically you. So being able to know what you want, know what it looks like, and then be selective in those areas and with significant others, friends, family, and what those relationships look like. My standards have definitely changed. Well, not really. They're way deeper now. They're way more. Before it was a very surface level thing. Now they're really, really deep. So that's how mine changed.
No, I'm with that. Tell my godson I said hi. Art, what do you have in regards to that? How have your standards changed through?
Well, I wanted to tell Tim I don't know if he has, but don't ever play Monopoly with Chastity, bro. I don't know how the hell she does it, but somehow she be sniping people in Monopoly. She takes everyone out and then she laughs. Like, what happened?
Yeah. When someone starts playing Monopoly and they get the calculator out, you know you're in trouble. Put it to you that way.
Yeah, no.
Oh yeah, yeah. But
go ahead.
Standard wise, it's changed. I know mine have changed more for like the cold hearted, right? The not gonna fall for the game anymore. The guilt trips, the word manipulations. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, you want to be a part of it. Like I said, you want to be a part of my life. You'll call me. You'll text me. You'll show interest. You'll be like, hey, what's your address? We're down the street. You know, so on and so forth or whatnot. And I like Tim saying about communication, but I want to add a little bit on that because this last weekend I kind of had a little incident where it's not so much communication, but the understanding of that what's being communicated. You know what I mean? Because the wife and I were going back and forth on a debate, on an argument, on it was, and then all of a sudden she says, "This isn't going to work out." I took it as a, "Oh shit, our marriage is ending." But she was just talking about the situation in that moment of what we were talking about. But me being the traumatized, the person that went through some crap with the previous marriage, that when I saw that sign, the words came out, I took that automatically like a boom. I need to put up my wall, time to set up some defense, time to move some funds around, time to go find my place. You know what I mean? Because unfortunately that gesture, that was a PTSD that was triggered, I guess, that I didn't understand what she meant. I took it totally opposite of what it was really meant to be, you know? But it goes back to again, the standards changing in regards to not so much what's in it for you or me, but what's in it for us. How are we going to evolve? Because one thing I enjoy about my wife that we've, in a sense, kind of, you know, got together on is it's not so much of a happy wife, happy life, but a happy spouse, happy house. You know what I mean? Because
I like that.
Yeah, we just as she's got the days where she doesn't want to do nothing, I gotta help out. As the days I don't want to do nothing, she helps out. So it's like at the end of the day, it's our house, it's an our thing. And if one or two are not happy, this house is gonna go to shit. You know what I mean?
Right.
So going back on, you know, again, standards is, you know, I kind of notice that the smaller the circle, sometimes the better off you are. But as long as we're progressing, because it's like goes to that saying, show me who you hang out with, I'll tell you who you're gonna be.
Right.
If you're hanging out with, you know, successful people, Billy, I consider you a successful man. You're always doing things, you're always moving around. Then if I, you know, hang on at least to your belt, you know what I mean, or your pocket, then I'm eventually gonna get some of that bling bling from you. You know what I mean?
Wow. Okay.
Up, you know,
all the bling bling.
Hey, it's really funny how we take things to the next level as a man. Like Billy, you said something earlier about how she said you weren't being very considerate of me, and you took that as, man, I'm not an inconsiderate person now, and then you took that as, our marriage is over. I think we tend to do that because we think of ourselves as, we have such high standards for ourselves. We think, man, I'm a considerate person. I wouldn't have conducted myself in a way that wouldn't have been considerate, and so you take kind of like umbrage with that, which I will tell you, you're not alone in that. That happens all the time where it's like, wait a minute, you trying to say I don't do that? I ain't gonna let that slide. She was like, I'm talking about this one situation. I'm like, right. Okay. And then you start wanting to, almost like a legal case, you want to plead your case. Like, okay, so you point out this one situation, about those 10 other times where it's the other way. We're gonna bring those up. And she goes, and it's like, we got it. Like, as for me, I got to get out of that. And I've been working on that because it's the currency of our great relationship shows she sees those things. And she says, and she comments sometimes too, but I'm a little bit beyond the point where I need a gold star for every correct answer on my test. You know what I mean? And I think in a way that, you know, that's still there to an extent. And I know personally that's something I'm working on too. But it's funny how it shows up in each of your lives too in different ways.
Yeah. No, you know, it's funny, the communication aspect. I'm gonna share a secret that I'm in the process of experimenting with, but I'm finding with my wife, going back to me feeling like she was saying I was an inconsiderate person, right? When I sat with that and why I was so defensive and reactive to it, I really had to look at like, well, it's like when you're in elementary school, first grade, and they teach you math, addition, right? 1 + 1, 2 + 2, 3 + 3, whatever, right? When you first start off, you're writing those problems out because you need help. You need to see it. But by the time you're in 6th grade, you're not writing what's 1 + 1 out. You're like, I know 1 + 1 = 2. Let's just keep moving forward, right? Because math becomes kind of like an autopilot situation. And what I didn't realize is in my relationship, when it came to communicating the moments where I consider her, I wasn't sharing any of that. I was doing that work in my head. I was just 1 + 1 works in my head, done. I considered her in this decision that I'm making. And so what I've started doing, and it's interesting because she's actually responded to it. What I started doing is in the moments where I may have a conversation where I consider her in that conversation, but she's not present to hear the consideration, I come back and I have dialogue with my wife, not in an argument, not in an agitated space, but just, hey, this is what I was talking about, and this is what I said. And I make sure I include what I said, the consideration part behind what I said. Because, so for instance, my custody agreement has just changed to where my kids are now in California. I go to California 1 week a month. And in the interim of that, or also in the interim of me being in California when I'm not there, I have co-parenting counseling with their mother. And I was having this conversation in counseling where the therapist was like, well, do you want to do back-to-back sessions? Because we go every other week. And I was like, you know, for me, I don't want to go to co-parenting counseling every week, because that to me is taking away from the time that I have while I'm here in Utah to spend with my wife. And I don't know about you, but for me, it doesn't make sense to not be married to this person anymore, but then spend more time with this person than I spend with my wife, even though it's not the same because it's literally a day. But it's like, I don't want this to be an issue in my marriage. I'm not going to sacrifice my marriage for co-parenting counseling. And I was like, I'm considering our relationship. And I shared that with my wife. And 2 days later, she was like, hey, babe, I just want to thank you for considering me in that schedule of, oh, well, do you want to do 3 sessions in a row before you go back to California? Thank you for considering me in that session. And what it showed me is when you stop doing the math in your head. So we talk about women in the aspect of they want us to read their minds. But us as men, we don't want them to read our minds. We want them to have the assumption of innocence. We want them to have the assumption of we considered them in the decision we make. We didn't just make some stupid random decision.
Trust me. Yeah.
Right.
think the best possible outcome of me, not the worst. Right.
Right. And so in that play, I'm working on giving my wife more of the showing my work, right? Giving her more of me showing the work of the math problem. So that way, when we do have an issue and that breakdown, like you said, you had, Art, where it's like, this isn't going to work. Now, because we've shown enough of the work, we can go back to where that breakdown in communication took place. We can get back to the space and say, okay, in co-parenting counseling, we talk about clarifying questions. Hey, when you say clarify, when you say this isn't going to work, what exactly do you mean? what are you referring to this? What is the this and this isn't going to work? Now, when you have that clarity because you're showing work, you're able to go back to the this part and say, well, this conversation, we're not getting anywhere, so this isn't going to work. We need to stop this conversation. Now, you're not looking at apartments.com. How much money do I got for a deposit? Now you're not doing all this unnecessary stuff that amps us up. And then it never really dissipates, I think is the word. Dissipates, one of those. Dissipates. It never dissipates from who we are. And so we carry that. And then in the next argument, there's already this pre-charged energy on, hey, look, I ain't forgot when you freaking said we wasn't going to work. I ain't forgot. Even though I know now that's not what you meant, I still feel some kind of way about that. And it just carries over from interaction to interaction. And I think it's important. It's going to be one of the takeaways, but I just got to say it now is one of the things you started off with is that communication requires comprehension. You're not communicating if the other party can't comprehend. Guess what? I speak English. If somebody comes to me speaking to me in German, I don't care how slow they speak it, I'm not going to understand it. Look out. In German, I don't know what that is. So you could say look out, and I'm going to just be like, I'm sorry, in English, because I don't speak German. But communication requires us to be able to comprehend, and it requires the other person to be able to comprehend. And if you're not asking, I'm telling you now, if you're not asking clarifying questions in your communication, you're probably not communicating because you're making way too many assumptions when all you have to do is ask. So I'm on one right now, but let me bring it back really quick.
Real quick. I'm on like 2% because my phone wasn't plugged into the wall. I had it plugged in the charger, but it wasn't plugged into the wall. So if I get dropped, it's because my phone died. But I love what you said. I like to call that seeking understanding. That's the comprehension. Like you say something like, what does that mean to you? Does that make sense to you? And then just let them kind of expand. Because you're right. Like the showing the work aspect is major. But I'll turn it back to you.
Oh, you're good. We're actually getting ready to wrap, but before I do, I want to bring in what Keith says. Define terms in a relationship to get an understanding of what the other person means. Yep. Not everyone uses the Webster's definition for every word. Some have their own meaning behind certain words. Absolutely. He says, I'm currently in the process of learning that communication skill. I think if you're married or in any kind of relationship, you're constantly in the process of learning that communication skill.
Always. Yeah. Always.
So with that, though, we got about 15 minutes before we need to wrap. Tim, since your battery's at 2%, I'm going to let you do final thoughts.
Final thoughts, and I'm going to have Noah hold the phone as I drive.
Good times. That sounds safe.
Yeah, it sounds real safe. That would like give my good side, Noah. But anyway, my final thoughts are just how everything kind of goes hand in hand. The accountability, taking inventory. If you're communicating effectively, then you don't have the regrets of the inventory you take. Sometimes you have to think about, man, did I cut that person out too soon? Did I even give them the benefit of the doubt of a conversation? But it's having living in the learning and learning how to communicate. Not only saying what you want to get across, but sometimes explaining why you feel that way and then asking them how they feel about it. That enriches the understanding and it helps things go a lot better. Like I've had conversations where my wife said something, she realized she triggers a chord. Like I don't think like maybe she has about the consideration, but she'll say something. I'll say, do you really think I'm being considerate? And she'll clarify. And then that gives me like my compliment. So I'm, like you said, Billy, I'm like fricka. You know, I'm not Yosemite salmoning around the house all irritated. So yeah, it's funny how all.
Did we lose his phone? We might have lost his phone. His little 2% might have jumped. Fell out.
It's at negative 2% right now.
I think we lost him. All right, Brother Tim. Well, if you're still talking, we can't hear you. All right, what you got as far as closing thoughts?
just closing thought. Yeah, kind of piggyback off of Tim and the things of accountability, taking accountability of what your expectations are, right? Like, because we expect, but is that person going to be able to meet it, and are we able to overcome they didn't meet it? You know what I mean? How can we work out with them to meet our standards, but at the same time, we need to meet their standards. You know what I mean? Then that's sometimes my challenge is like, wait a minute, you haven't really made it to my level yet, but I gotta help. I gotta be there, and it's just the overall communicating, comprehension, understanding, the not to expect exactly what I'm saying, but at least have an idea of what I'm saying so we can progress on our problems.
Right.
And just that timeout of like, wait a minute, am I understanding what she's trying to say? Because again, this isn't going to work out. To me, was we're breaking up. You know what I mean?
Right. It's over.
Yeah.
Like, it's over. Well, then another thing.
Yeah. That's when all the laundry comes out.
I got some other things I want to get off my chest really quick. No, I agree with that. I think there is, even to Key's point on that communication aspect and your point on the communication aspect, I think there is a certain level of grace that we have to re-engage with when it comes to being in relationships. Because and my wife talks to me about this all the time. My wife, I'm like, with a lot of people, I'm pretty patient, but I do a lot of the work in my head. So like, if I think I know what you're going to say, I'm going to like, hey, no, I'm just going to answer your question. Because sometimes in my mind, I'm like, you're taking too long to ask this question, and I know what it is. But there's been times, even I think, in fact, today, my wife had said something to me, and I was like, no. And she was like, babe, let me finish. My wife calls me out every single time I do it. And it's a challenge for me to like be like, okay, let this person say what they're going to say. Because here, if I say no, imagine if she got triggered by me saying no, right? I'm saying no to something that I think it's this, and it's actually really getting ready to be something that I would say yes to. It'd be like she'd be like, you know what, babe? And I'll be like, no. And her thing is really gonna be like, do you love me, or did you know I love you? And I'm like, no, already before she even finishes the saying. No, I didn't. And then now, because she says I was gonna ask, did you know I love you? Well, no, I still got to know, right?
I can speak louder than words, girl.
So I guess for me, my closing thought would be really about, when it comes to taking inventory, it's about finding out what is organically who you want to be. And I like the fact that you brought up the people that you have around you will help be an indicator of where you're headed, right? Now you got a choice. You can part ways from those people and get around some other people that'll take you in a different direction. You can be successful today and then get in a group with a bunch of crackheads and be a crackhead tomorrow. Or you can be a crackhead today and get in a group with people who are not doing crack and not be a crackhead tomorrow. Like that path, it's neutral. The world is neutral in that regard. So you're going to get whatever you want it to be. Yeah, you're going to get whatever you want, whatever you choose to be around. Yeah. But for me, when it comes to taking inventory, I think the biggest thing is about being true to yourself and loyal to yourself.
Amen.
Because you being unloyal to yourself means you're an unloyal person around people you really don't want to be around, or you're allowing people who are probably also unloyal to themselves to be around you. Then you wonder why your best dude sleeps with your girl, or you got somebody who broke into your house and used the code because you gave them the code to your house to break into your house and steal your TV. Yeah. Like, those things happen because we sometimes refuse to take inventory, and we sometimes choose loyalty to a person who we used to be, which allowed that person to enter our lives. My wife had asked me about with my relationship with my ex-wife. She was like, well, how did you end up with a person like that? Because you're really like smart and articulate and do like a lot of things like business-wise. Yeah. How did you end up with a person like this? And I was like, at the time that I was with her, when we first got together, I wasn't Billy today.
Yeah.
I was Billy back then. And I had to make a choice for growth and wisdom and stretching myself and putting myself in higher spaces with people who are way beyond me. I had to put myself in that space, and that caused me to grow. Unfortunately, that person didn't put themselves in spaces with that. They stayed in the space that they were in, and they were still in the space that they were in.
Because
and
they
that's
want to let it go.
to that person. Maybe that's who they want to be. Be loyal to that. Yeah. But I got to be loyal to me. And the loyalty to me says, I grew and I want somebody who's going to grow with me so I don't feel like I'm leaving them behind.
Yeah.
So because I don't want to feel like I'm leaving them behind, I need to leave this relationship because the distance between the two of us now is too great.
Yeah.
And because that distance is there, the intimacy is going to be broken. I'm going to be the cheating husband, finding females who I have a better connection with. Like, I'm not interested in any of that.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it really, when it comes to taking inventory, it's about surrounding yourself with the people that remind you of who you want to become. Right?
Yes.
Reminding you of who you want to become. If they're not reminding you of who you want to become, yeah.
Or they're reminding you of who you used to be and you don't want to be, then yeah.
Right. Come on, man. Let's just go on one more time, hang out. Look, let me tell you right now, I don't really have a desire to go to the club because I don't want to be around that many people. So if you want to go to the club, y'all have a good time. Like, I don't mind going out dancing like once every year, but every weekend, like, absolutely not. Please, I got to go to work on Monday.
Yeah,
Friday night.
Especially with the fad they got going on right now, bro. They're all buying like expensive bottles and just dumping them just like that. I'm like, what? You guys got that kind of money? Oh man,
that's not my pay grade. I'm sorry. Even if it was, that's not my lifestyle. Yeah. So, as always with this men's circle, with the session on the men's circle, I like to share the takeaways. I have 5 takeaways that I grabbed from tonight that I want to share, and I'm going to share them really briefly because there's a couple things that I want to say after. Takeaway number 1 is taking inventory makes space for quality relationships. That's no different than what we were just saying. When you take inventory and you start to get rid of the people who are clogging up your warehouse, and you start you have room to bring in people who are going to actually add value and add equity to your life. Takeaway number 2 is often we refuse to take inventory out of guilt. And that was something that I gathered from you, Art, when you're talking about your family dynamics. It's like, man, I don't want to really look at the roster and see who I'm going to cut because I don't want to feel bad about having to cut them because they've been around for so long, or they were around when I was at my lowest, or whatever it may be, whatever story we tell ourselves to make it okay. Often we refuse to take that inventory, and if we can figure out the way or the means to get beyond the guilt, we will become better at taking inventory, and we'll select higher quality people to be involved in our life. Key takeaway number 3 is inventory is an accountability process. Look, as I said, you're not going to see somebody up here on the men's circle who's a deadbeat dad. It's just not. It's an accountability that I have. It's an instinctive accountability that I have as a father, but it's an accountability that I have to the men's circle. If we're going to be truly guiding men, if we're going to create a community for men who are of integrity and accountability, I can't have somebody up here who is like, yeah, you can do this, you can do that, you can do this, you can do that, but they kids don't know when the next time they're going to receive any kind of support for them, whether emotionally or financially. So that's key takeaway number 3. Inventory is an accountability process. Don't feel, going back to that guilt part, don't feel guilty because you have to cut the roster, but be accountable to where you want to be at in life later in the future. Because if you're not accountable to it today, I promise you won't be there tomorrow. Key takeaway number 4 is standards are designed to increase. When we are taking inventory, and this goes back to that relationship when I was talking with my wife, who I was 20 years ago and who I am today, those are 2 different people. I was intentionally growing and intentionally expanding my territory to become a better version of who I felt like I wanted to become. And because of that, my standards had to increase. There's no growth if you're just constantly comfortable. There's a lot of things that I do, even like with doing the conference coming up this the 24th in 12 days. There's a lot of things that I do that I'm not always comfortable with doing, but I do them in regards to how comfortable I feel in the moment, because I feel like they're going to grow me to another level that I need to be at for whatever it is I might have to encounter later in the future. And then lastly, number 5, the key takeaway number 5 is communication requires comprehension. I had to let that one out of the bag right when it came, but communication requires comprehension. If there's no comprehension in your communication, you're not communicating, because there's far too many stories that we tell ourselves. Art will tell you there's far too many stories that we tell ourselves when we make assumptions that sometimes, and I probably lean on the fact that most times aren't even accurate, like at all. And some of that is just because of we're sensitive to certain things, like you said, Art, the PTSD that we might have from traumas that we have in the past. Look, I will tell you, when you are in relationships where you feel like you've been let down and rejected and just taken for granted, unappreciated, right? When you feel that way, it's easy to be in a conversation and to assume the worst when it's not that. It's easy. And I had a very similar experience where it was like, oh, you need to be away from me? You need space? I'm going to give you all the space you need. And they were like, no, I just needed a moment. Oh.
Yeah, they're like, yo, he even took the ice cube trays.
He threw the ice in the sink and took the trays. These my silicone trays. So that's what I have for you guys tonight on the key takeaways. Definitely it was a live. Appreciate you guys in the live chat. You guys were lively tonight. Appreciate that. Really quick, some of the things that we have coming up, though registration has ended, so registration is now closed. I did want to give a shout out to the Men's Circle's first in-person event. That will be Sunday, September 24th, 2023, Sutter Fort Hotel, Sacramento, California. And the theme is legacy, but we're also placing men back into mentorship. I think the part of the Men's Circle community is really getting us back out there as mentors. And part of being mentors is realizing that there's others who share your experience and share similar experiences to you, have similar feelings to you, and need sometimes some guidance from the perspectives if you've already been through it, or if you're going through it, just need some support. So that's the very first thing. I'll try to go next year, Casual. You're welcome to come. Absolutely. The other thing that we have, and it's been so weird not having the Wednesday word, but we're not going to have any more Wednesday words, at least for the time being. But the other thing that I wanted to definitely put out there is just a thank you to all the men who have shared support, whether you're sending me text messages, calling me, you're on the Men's Circle, on the live chat, you're whatever, however you support it, even if you're just talking to another guy about it, and they come and check it out for 5 minutes. I definitely appreciate the love and the support that I've received from the men in the community. There's a lot that I go through in life. And as much as your words of how much this has meant for you and how much it's helped you probably mean to you, this is something that definitely gives me a recharge and a reboost. And it's really good to see like us as men being able to be transparent with each other and say like, yo, like, look, I got this completely freaking wrong this week. I got this wrong yesterday. But the fact that we're able to come and have that conversation says, okay, maybe in some ways we're wired that way as men, right? We're wired that way. But in the other aspect of it, as men who are accountable to other men, we can work on rewiring the process. And so I wanted to just extend some gratitude and appreciation to every man that's been tuned in. And as this community continues to grow, realize there's going to be more live events, some men retreats. There's going to be some things that are coming down the pipeline. And I want as many men as possible to be attached to that. So that's all I got for you guys tonight. As always, it's a pleasure interacting with your brother Art. Brother Tim, if you're out there in cyberspace with your negative 2% battery, thanks for tuning in with us tonight too. But until the next time, if you like this video, share it. If you do share this video, please like it. Always happy to engage with you in the live chat, and we are always happy to engage with you in the comment section for the first 7 days that the content is up. Other than that, until the next time, one love, peace, and God bless. Thanks for sitting on the first row.